At 6 o'clock on a chilly morning in late November, my phone rang suddenly on the nightstand beside my bed. When I looked at the screen and saw the name Mom flashing, my heart started pounding. I answered, and my mother's trembling voice came through the line. "Carson, can you talk? I need to apologize to you for everything." Hearing those words sent a strange feeling rushing through me, a mix of satisfaction and pain. But to understand why this call mattered so much, I need to take you back to the beginning. Imagine being told to leave the Thanksgiving dinner table, right in front of everyone, and the one giving the order was your own family. Imagine the humiliation, the rejection, the way it feels to be treated like an outsider in the very home you once called yours. That's exactly what happened to me. And the story I'm about to tell will show you precisely how to deal with bullies inside your own family. For 25 years, I let them treat me like garbage. I accepted the role of the failure, the one who was never good enough, always compared, always kept in my place. But this story is about how I ended it all once and for all. You'll hear the exact words I used, the plan I put into action, and the phone call that changed everything. You'll see how I flipped the script from being a powerless victim to the one in control. In that moment, as I prepared to lay out every detail of this journey, I realized this wasn't just a story about revenge. But first, you need to understand just how deep this rabbit hole goes. I still remember the very first moment I realized I was different in my family. I was 12 years old, sitting in the living room while my parents discussed future plans for my brother and sister. When I asked what plans they had for me, my father, Thomas, looked at me with indifference and said, "Carson, you just need to focus on not causing trouble." Those words tightened something in my chest, and I felt the bitter gap between myself and my siblings. Destiny, my oldest sister, was always praised as the little genius with her outstanding academics. Zane, my older brother, was called the future leader because of his charisma and confidence. But me? I was just the youngest who needed to be looked after. In every family discussion, from dividing up chores to planning vacations, my opinion was never asked for. Whenever I tried to join the conversation, my mother, Margaret, would quickly cut me off and say, "Carson, let the adults talk." Each time I heard that, I instinctively stepped back, even though my mind was still wrestling with why I was treated so differently. Even during important family celebrations, the gap became painfully obvious. When Destiny won her college scholarship, the whole family threw a party. When Zane became captain of the high school basketball team, my parents invited the relatives over to celebrate. But when I won first place in a school writing competition, my mother simply nodded and said flatly, "Good job, now go finish your homework." No. In that moment, I realized I had lost something precious. I could never get back the belief that I mattered in my family's eyes. When I stepped into adulthood, I hoped things would change. But the old pattern continued, as ruthless as ever. After graduating with a degree in marketing, I landed a job at a small advertising agency in Los Angeles. When I shared the good news at a family dinner, my father frowned and asked, "Marketing? Why didn't you choose a more serious career like Destiny or Zane?" That question lit a fire of anger inside me, though I still tried to explain my passion and my plans. But what made it worse were the endless comparisons. At every family gathering, Destiny, the successful cardiologist, was always the center of attention. Zane, with his own law firm and massive income, was celebrated like a hero. And me? I became the cautionary tale. Look at Carson, a life without clear direction. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, or birthday, the same script is repeated. They would beam with admiration when asking about Destiny and Zane, then turn to me with a flat, dismissive, "And Carson? Still at the same company?" In those moments, I sank into disappointment, silently questioning what mistake I had made in the past to deserve this. Even when I was promoted to art director and my salary increased significantly, the family's reaction was still cold. My mother simply nodded and said, "That's good, but compared to Zane, you've still got a long way to go." It was in that moment that I understood the true meaning of the word lonely. Lonely right in the middle of my own family. The turning point came one afternoon in September, as I sat in the office of my therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen. After months of sessions, during one particularly pivotal conversation, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Carson, do you realize your family is engaging in emotional abuse?" When I heard the word abuse, My heart seemed to stop, and my body froze. In that moment, it was as if a quiet voice from deep within whispered that I deserved better. Dr. Chen went on to explain the signs of toxic family dynamics, and every word she spoke lined up perfectly with my own experiences. When I left her office that day, a strange feeling washed over me, a sense that my life was about to change completely. For the first time in my life, I decided this Thanksgiving would be different. Right then, I knew I would never see things the same way again. I spent the next 6 months planning, and in the process, I discovered something that would give me all the power I needed. After my session with Dr. Chen, I started to see my family through a completely different lens. Instead of accepting the role of the victim, I decided to dig deeper into the real power structure of the Miller family. One weekend in early October, while visiting the farm, I noticed my father nervously discussing financial issues with Zane. The moment I walked into the room, Thomas fell silent and quickly said, "Carson, your brother and I are talking business. Go find something else to do." That familiar tone didn't sting the way it used to. Instead, it sparked a strange sense of curiosity. That night, after everyone was asleep, I slipped into my father's office in the basement. The place was filled with stacks of financial records for the farm documents I had never been allowed to touch. Under the dim glow of the desk lamp, I started combing through the folders. What I uncovered made my heart race. The financial reports showed that the Miller farm was in serious trouble. Revenue from the almond harvest had been plummeting for 3 straight years, while operating costs kept climbing. Worse, I found a series of high-interest bank loans my father had signed just within the past year. It hit me immediately. My family was on the brink of financial collapse. But the most intriguing discovery was inside a folder labeled Legal Documents. Inside was my grandfather Miller's will. He had passed away when I was 18, and I had never seen the details before. As I read through the clauses carefully, I instinctively stepped back, my mind struggling to process what I had just learned. According to the will, the Miller farm didn't fully belong to my father, as I had always believed. Instead, my grandfather had divided ownership into 3 equal shares for his grandchildren, Destiny, Zane, and me. Each of us would gain full rights to our portion once we turned 30. In that moment, I understood the true weight of what I had discovered. I would be turning 30 in March, just 4 months away. That meant I was about to become a 1/3 co-owner of the Miller farm, and with it, the power that came along. As I dug deeper into the legal documents, I uncovered something even more important. To sell the farm or carry out any major financial transaction, all 3 heirs had to agree, which meant if my father wanted to mortgage more of the property for another loan, he would need my signature. Right then, something shifted deep inside me, like spring quietly waking seeds beneath the soil. Over the next few weeks, I studied the family's financial situation more closely. Through phone calls with the bank pretending to be my father's assistant, I learned that Thomas had already applied for a $500,000 loan to save the farm. The loan would have to be secured by the entire property. But what they didn't know was that my signature was required to finalize the deal. In a private phone call with the family's attorney, Mr. Peterson, he confirmed everything I had uncovered. When I asked about my rights, the seasoned lawyer looked at me with surprise and said, "Carson, you have the legal authority to refuse signing any document tied to the farm, and no one can force you." Hearing those words, my heart pounded in my chest while my mind went strangely blank as I realized the sheer power I now held. With this information in hand, I began preparing for the final confrontation. I photocopied all the critical documents and locked them in a safe deposit box at the bank. I also gathered further evidence showing how my family had kept financial information hidden from me. To strengthen myself mentally, I increased my sessions with Dr. Chen. During one pivotal meeting, when I shared my plan, she looked at me with concern and asked, "Carson, are you sure you're ready for the consequences that may come?" Hearing that question, my chest tightened not from pain, but from the realization of a deeper truth. I could no longer live as a victim. I also built a support system outside my family. I confided in a few close friends and colleagues, creating a network of people who could bear witness to my journey. Finally, I mapped out every detail for Thanksgiving dinner. I decided this would be the moment I revealed my new leverage, but only if they proved nothing had changed in the way they treated me. In that moment, I knew this was just the beginning of a chain of events that would change everything. With this knowledge in my hands, I walked into Thanksgiving dinner like a warrior heading into battle. And I was ready. On the afternoon of November 22, I drove my old Honda Civic from Los Angeles to Bakersfield. The 3-hour ride along I-5 gave me just enough time to run through my plan one last time. When I saw the sign that read Bakersfield 15 miles, I drew in a deep breath and braced myself for the battle ahead. The Miller farm stretched across 200 fertile acres, with a white 2-story farmhouse standing squarely in the middle of neat almond rows. That fall, the bare branches gave the landscape a somber tone, almost like a warning of the storm about to break. As I pulled up in front of the porch, my mother, Margaret, stepped out with a strained smile and said, "Carson, you made it. I didn't think you'd come." The moment I heard her greeting, I caught the tone I knew all too well, that strange mix of surprise and mild disappointment, as if my presence was an inconvenience she hadn't counted on. Walking into the house, the familiar smell of roasted turkey mingled with pumpkin pie drifted from the kitchen. The living room was beautifully decorated with golden chrysanthemums and red maple leaves. Everything looked picture perfect, like a portrait of a happy family, except for the quiet tension that hung in the air. Destiny sat on the brown leather sofa in a cream-colored cashmere sweater, talking to her husband, David, about a complicated heart surgery she had just performed. Zane stood by the fireplace, animatedly recounting the details of a $1 million lawsuit he had won the week before. In that moment, I felt like I was walking into a movie where I wasn't part of the main cast. When Zane noticed me, he broke off his story and walked over with a polished smile, greeting me in a tone that was polite, yet distant. "Carson, long time no see. I hear you're still at that ad agency?" The way he stressed the word "that" twisted something inside me, but I held my composure and answered with a calm smile. It didn't take long for the old dynamics to resurface. While I was helping my mother set the table, I could hear the conversation in the living room revolving around the brilliant accomplishments of my siblings. Destiny was talking about how a hospital had just offered her the position of chief of the cardiology department, while her husband, David, chimed in proudly. They gave Destiny a $150,000 raise last year, not to mention the bonuses from her private surgeries. At that number, my father, Thomas, nodded approvingly and praised her. "That's incredible, Destiny. I'm so proud of you. You've proven the Miller family really does have smart genes." Then it was Zane's turn in the spotlight. He went on about how his law office had just opened a new branch in San Francisco, with a team of 15 attorneys under his leadership. Every detail he shared was met with admiration and focused attention. Then came a strange pause as everyone realized I was standing quietly in the corner. My mother turned to me with a strained smile and asked, "And Carson? Anything new with you?" The way she asked sounded more like a required formality than genuine interest. As I began sharing about a major ad campaign I had just completed for a well-known brand, I could see their eyes start to drift. Before I could finish, Zane cut me off and shifted the conversation. "Speaking of brands, Dad, did I tell you about the deal I just closed with Tesla?" Right then, I realized I had lost something I could never get back, the illusion that this family actually cared about me. But this time, instead of feeling wounded, I studied them with the eyes of a researcher. I noticed how they cut me off, how they redirected attention, how they subtly diminished my accomplishments. As everyone began settling around the dinner table, I deliberately chose a seat at the far end, a spot that gave me a clear view of every single person. The table was set beautifully with a burgundy tablecloth and scented candles, creating the perfect warm glow for a family gathering. But when my father stood to give the traditional Thanksgiving prayer, he once again singled out the proud achievements of Destiny and Zane. I was mentioned only as an afterthought, and may Carson find some direction in life. The word direction ignited a slow burn inside me, but I kept my composure. Through the appetizers, the conversation kept circling around the golden children's accomplishments. I sat in silence, mentally tallying each time I was interrupted or ignored. By the time the main course was served, the count had reached 9. But I wasn't focused on the number. I was waiting for the moment I knew would come, the moment they would cross the line. They never could hide their true nature for long. This pattern had played out too many times over the past 25 years. When Destiny began comparing her salary to people Carson's age, I knew the moment was drawing close. When Zane made a pointed comment about how I was still not settled down at 29, I could feel the tension in the air tightening like a wire. In that instant, My instincts told me the explosion was coming. I just needed one more trigger. And with this family, I knew it would arrive soon enough. Right then, I understood this was only the beginning. With 25 years of experience in toxic family dynamics, I could predict exactly what was about to happen next. The trigger moment came while we were having dessert. My mother had just brought out the traditional pumpkin pie when Destiny suddenly turned to me with a patronizing smile and said, "Carson, I have some good news for you. My hospital is hiring a coordinator for the marketing department. The salary isn't much, but at least you'd get medical benefits." Her words tightened something inside me as I realized she was treating me like a charity case. Before I could respond, Zane jumped in with his helpful big brother tone. "Or you could come work on the farm with Dad. I know you don't have a business background, but I could train you to be an assistant. You'd learn a lot." The moment I heard the word assistant, my pulse quickened, and I felt the blood rush to my face. But the final blow came from my father. Thomas set down his wine glass, looked at me with the cold eyes of a boss assessing an underperforming employee, and said, "Carson, you're 29 years old and still don't have any direction. Your mother and I worry you're going to become a burden on this family. Maybe it's time you grow up and accept reality." The word burden lodged in my throat, and it felt like the whole world around me was collapsing. But Thomas wasn't finished. His tone grew harsher. "Look at your brother and sister. Destiny saves lives. Zane wins million-dollar cases. And you? You make posters. I don't understand how you could waste your education on something kids could do." Each word stabbed into me like a knife. Destiny and Zane sat silently, offering no defense. My mother even nodded in agreement. Finally, Margaret looked at me with pity and added the last cut. "You know, Mrs. Henderson asked me about you the other day. I didn't know what to say when she asked what you're doing with your life." Honestly, I felt so embarrassed. And in that moment, it was as if a voice deep within me whispered the truth. I couldn't endure this any longer. In that instant, 25 years of humiliation erupted inside me like a volcano. I slowly rose to my feet, placed my napkin on the table, and for the first time in my life, I looked my parents directly in the eyes with a calm that felt almost terrifying. With a voice that was controlled yet firm, I said to the whole family, "I have something to share with all of you about the real situation in this family." The seriousness in my tone silenced the room. Everyone stared at me in shock. I continued with a newfound confidence. "Dad, I know about the $500,000 loan. I also know the farm is on the brink of bankruptcy. And most importantly, I know you need my signature to complete the application." The moment I mentioned the loan, Thomas's face drained of color. He stammered, "Carson, where did you hear about that?" Before he could recover, I dropped the next bombshell. "I also know about Grandpa's will. I'll own 1/3 of this farm come March, and no one can mortgage the property without my consent." At that revelation, Destiny and Zane exchanged panicked looks, while my mother sat frozen, as if struck by lightning. Zane tried to regain control by standing up and saying, "What are you talking about? You don't understand anything about business or legal matters." But this time, I wasn't the timid younger brother anymore. I turned to him with a cold smile and said, "Actually, Zane, I understand perfectly well. I consulted with Mr. Peterson. I have full copies of all the legal documents, and I know exactly what my rights are." At that moment, I sank into a strange, steady calm like the stillness before a storm. Thomas scrambled to do damage control, softening his tone. "Carson, we can talk about this. This is a family business. You'll benefit from it too." But I had already crossed the point of negotiation. With a voice as steady as ice, I answered, "For 25 years, I've never been treated like a member of this family. And now I finally understand why. Because all of you knew I held the power you needed." Total silence fell over the dining room. The only sounds were the ticking of the grandfather clock and the heavy breaths of those seated around the table. Finally, I delivered my ultimatum. Looking around at each face, my voice flat and emotionless, I said, "I'm giving you one last chance. Apologize for the last 25 years and treat me as an equal member of this family from now on. Or I walk away forever, and your loan application will be denied." Margaret shot up, her face flushed red, and screamed, "Carson! How dare you threaten your own family? You're so ungrateful." Destiny quickly joined in, her tone sharp and cutting. "You're acting like a spoiled brat. We've sacrificed so much for you." Zane folded his arms and declared coldly, "You want to play hardball? Fine. But don't expect us to beg you." Hearing their responses, my mind spun even as my body stood frozen like stone. But deep down, I knew this was exactly the reaction I had expected. They had given me my answer. No apology. No acknowledgement of the pain they had caused. Only more blame and manipulation. I picked up my jacket from the chair, walked calmly toward the door, then turned back one last time to deliver my final words. I spent 25 years trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. Today, that ends. Enjoy your Thanksgiving dinner, and good luck with the loan application. Oh! As I stepped out the door, I heard Thomas shouting behind me, "Carson! Get back here! We're not finished!" But I didn't turn back. Sliding into my car and starting the engine, I smiled for the first time all day. In that moment, I knew I would never see things the same way again. As I drove away from the farm, I pulled out my phone and made 3 calls that would destroy the world they thought they controlled. They had no idea what was coming. As soon as I drove away from the farm, I pulled into a Shell station about 5 miles down the road. Under the harsh glow of the fluorescent lights, I took out my phone and made the first call to Mr. Peterson, the family attorney. Even though it was already past 7, the seasoned lawyer picked up right away when he heard the urgency in my voice. "Carson, you sound upset. What happened?" With a voice steady but resolute, I laid out the entire situation. When I finished, there was a pause, just a few seconds of silence before Mr. Peterson responded thoughtfully. "You are fully within your rights to refuse signing any documents. So tell me, Carson, what do you want me to do?" Hearing that confirmation, my heart pounded in my chest, and my mind went strangely blank as I realized the power I now held. "I want you to draft a formal letter to First National Bank," I said clearly. "Inform them that Carson Miller, as future 1/3 owner of Miller Farm, categorically refuses to consent to the loan application. Effective immediately." Mr. Peterson hesitated only for a moment before replying, "I'll draft the letter tonight and have it faxed to the bank first thing Monday morning. That will freeze the loan process immediately." The second call I made was to Dr. Chen. Even though it was a holiday evening, she answered on the 3rd ring. "Carson, I've been worried about you. How did it go?" When I relayed the entire confrontation, her voice grew firm yet supportive. "You did exactly the right thing. This is healthy boundary setting, not revenge." Hearing that validation, a wave of relief spread through me. The third call, the most significant of all, was to David Mitchell, editor of the Bakersfield Californian and an old college friend. The Miller family had enough prominence in the agricultural community to catch media attention. When David picked up, I could hear the sound of a TV and children laughing in the background. "Carson, happy Thanksgiving, buddy. What's going on?" Choosing my words carefully, mindful of the ethical implications, I shared the story about a prominent local farming family facing severe financial troubles and potential foreclosure. David immediately grew alert. This could be big for the agricultural section. Family farms in crisis is a hot topic right now. Yeah. In that moment, I knew this was only the beginning, the start of a chain of events that would reshape my family's entire world. Monday morning hit like a lightning bolt. By 8:30 a.m., my phone was ringing nonstop. The first call was from Thomas, his voice filled with a panic I had never heard before. "Carson, the bank just called. They said the loan was rejected because you refused to consent. Do you have any idea what this means?" Hearing the desperation in his voice, I felt no pain this time, only a strange, steady calm. "I know exactly what it means, Dad," I replied evenly. "It means the consequences are finally catching up with your behavior." Thomas immediately shifted into manipulation mode. "You're destroying your own family. We're going to lose everything." But I was immune to those tactics now. "You had 25 years to treat me like a member of this family. Now it's too late." The second call came from Destiny, and for the first time in my life, her voice carried no trace of condescension. "Carson, I need to talk to you. Family meeting, now. Can you come?" The way she suddenly spoke to me as an equal told me everything I needed to know. The power dynamics had shifted dramatically. "I'm busy," I answered simply, and hung up. Zane tried calling multiple times, but I let every one of them go to voicemail. In his messages, I could hear the progression from anger to frustration, to outright panic. That afternoon, the real consequences began to take shape. David called to confirm that the story would run on Wednesday morning. The headline will be Local Farm Family Faces Financial Crisis. I've already interviewed some neighbors and suppliers. Apparently, rumors about Miller Farm's troubles have been circulating in the community for a while. Hearing that, I felt a wave of satisfaction mixed with a trace of concern about the collateral damage. But the domino effect didn't stop there. By Tuesday evening, I received a call from Mrs. Henderson, our longtime neighbor. She had already caught wind of the rumors and wanted to know if the stories about the farm being sold were true. In that moment, I felt the full weight of the choices I had made and realized the entire community would soon know the truth about my family's financial collapse. Wednesday morning, when the newspaper hit the stands, the family's resistance campaign officially began. Margaret was the first to call, her voice dripping with venom. "Carson, you've destroyed this family's reputation. The whole community knows about our business troubles now." Her accusation sparked a quiet fire inside me, but I held my composure. "I didn't give the reporter any family information," I clarified evenly. "Everything he got came from public records and community gossip." But Margaret wasn't listening. She launched into full attack mode. "You're selfish. You're punishing this family just because your feelings got hurt." Destiny joined the smear campaign, calling mutual family friends and painting me as the ungrateful child sabotaging the family business. She spread the narrative that I was holding the family hostage over personal grievances. Zane took the legal route, calling me with threats. "You're making a huge mistake. I'll find legal loopholes to bypass you completely." For a split second, my heart stopped at his words, but I remembered Mr. Peterson's reassurance about the ironclad nature of the will. What surprised me most, though, was the community's reaction. Instead of siding with the prominent Miller family, many neighbors actually sympathized with me. Mrs. Chen from the neighboring farm called to say, "Carson, I've watched you grow up. Your family has treated you unfairly for far too long. You were right to stand up." Hearing that support from such unexpected places, a warmth spread through me, the kind of warmth I'd never felt from my own blood. By Friday afternoon, with pressure from the community mounting and foreclosure looming, Thomas made one last desperate attempt. His voice was broken when he called. "Carson, please. We can work something out. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." For a moment, I glimpsed a future where the family dynamic might actually change for the better. But after a long pause, clarity returned. I realized his plea was nothing more than desperation dressed as remorse. "You want to negotiate now only because you need something from me," I said firmly. "That's not love or respect. That's still control." And in that moment, I knew the biggest reveal hadn't arrived yet. When it did, it would change everything forever. Saturday morning, with the pressure mounting to a breaking point, I decided it was time to deploy the final weapon, the nuclear option. After a week of deeper digging, I had uncovered something that I knew would completely destroy Thomas's credibility in the community. Sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Bakersfield, I opened my laptop and reviewed the evidence I had collected. What I found wasn't just financial mismanagement, it was outright embezzlement from the farm workers' pension fund. Over the past 3 years, Thomas had systematically siphoned money from the fund he managed for employees, using it to cover his personal gambling debts at tribal casinos. The total stolen: $127,000. When I realized the scope of this deception, my fists clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had obtained the records through Maria Gonzalez, the farm's longtime bookkeeper. When she noticed the financial discrepancies, she quietly copied the documents before Thomas could cover his tracks. Maria had kept the evidence as her own insurance policy, but after hearing about the family conflict through community gossip, she decided to reach out to me. When she called me Tuesday evening and carefully explained the situation, her voice trembled with nerves. "Carson, I don't want to hurt your family, but those workers have families of their own. They're counting on that pension money for retirement." Hearing that revelation, my chest tightened, not from pain this time, but from the crushing realization of who my father really was. With this evidence in my hands, I knew Thomas's authority both in the family and in the community was about to collapse completely. This wasn't just about financial trouble from poor management. This was criminal behavior that endangered the livelihoods of dozens of families. And in that instant, something shifted deep inside me, like spring quietly awakening dormant seeds. For the first time, I had the power not only to defend myself, but to expose the toxic foundation my family had been built upon. By Saturday afternoon, I called David Mitchell again and provided him with the detailed information about the embezzlement, complete with documents and Maria's testimony. When David understood the magnitude of the story, his voice grew sharp and serious. "Carson, this is front-page news. Theft from worker pension funds is a federal crime. Are you absolutely sure about the accuracy of this information?" The confirmation of the legal implications made my head spin, though my body stayed rigid as stone. I knew there was no turning back. "I have the documents and the witness testimony," I said firmly. "Everything is verifiable." In that moment, I knew I would never see the world the same way again. The point of no return had been crossed. Sunday evening, I got a phone call from the last person I ever expected, David, Destiny's husband. When I answered, his voice was strained, cautious. "Carson, I need to talk to you, privately. Can we meet somewhere neutral?" The seriousness in his tone made my heart race with curiosity. We met at a Denny's on the edge of town, far enough to avoid any chance of running into family. When David slid into the booth across from me, I immediately noticed the dark circles under his eyes and the heavy, burdened look of a man carrying too much. After ordering coffee, he leaned forward and spoke quietly. "Carson, I've known what's been happening in this family for years. The way they treat you is completely unacceptable." His admission sent a powerful wave of validation through me. David's voice grew firmer. "Destiny doesn't know I'm here, but I can't just stand by and watch anymore. What happened Thursday night that was the final straw?" He paused, took a slow sip of coffee, and I could see the struggle flickering in his eyes. "I've documented countless examples of the emotional abuse in this family," he went on. "At first, it was just to protect our daughter from ever facing the same treatment. But now I realize I have to speak up for you." Hearing those words, my throat tightened with emotion. For the first time, a family member was acknowledging the pain I had endured. Then David reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, stuffed with notes and recordings. "I secretly recorded numerous family gatherings where they systematically demeaned you. I also kept written documentation of the psychological manipulation tactics they use." No. The sheer weight of the evidence made me lean back instinctively, my mind reeling as I tried to comprehend the magnitude of this unexpected ally. "Why did you stay silent all this time?" I asked. David's expression twisted with guilt. "Because I was a coward. I valued peace in my marriage over doing the right thing. But after what I witnessed Thursday night, I can't stay silent anymore." No. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of a future where the entire family dynamic could shift thanks to an alliance I never saw coming. With David's evidence combined with the embezzlement revelations, the avalanche began immediately. By Monday morning, David confronted Destiny with an ultimatum. He presented the evidence of systematic family abuse and told her he would publicly support me unless things changed right away. When Destiny realized her husband had been documenting the family's behavior for years, she completely broke down. According to David, she spent hours crying, questioning her own actions, and for the first time facing the truth about what she had been part of. What shocked me even more was the response from the extended family. That evening, Uncle Robert Thomas's younger brother called me with a voice heavy with regret. "Carson, did you know you're not the first victim in this family?" Those words froze my heart. It felt like the world tilted open into an entirely new perspective. Uncle Robert explained that Thomas had displayed the same abusive patterns toward his younger siblings when they were children. "Your grandfather always favored Thomas and Destiny's mother, while emotionally neglecting the other kids. Thomas learned this behavior early, it's a cycle." Suddenly, everything became clear. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a generational cycle of abuse passed down through decades. By Tuesday, Maria Gonzalez agreed to go public with the embezzlement evidence after David helped ensure she had legal protection. When the story broke on Wednesday morning, the community's reaction was swift and devastating for Thomas. The Farm Workers Union immediately filed a formal complaint with the district attorney. Community leaders who had once respected Thomas quickly distanced themselves. Even the church board, where Thomas had served faithfully for 15 years, quietly asked for his resignation. But the avalanche didn't stop there. Other buried secrets started surfacing as community members finally felt safe to speak up. Mrs. Patterson, a longtime neighbor, revealed that she had witnessed Thomas screaming at me in public many times throughout my childhood. I always felt bad for Carson, she admitted, but I thought it was a private family matter. Dr. Martinez, our family physician, confirmed that he had raised concerns about my emotional well-being during my teenage years, but Thomas had refused every counseling recommendation. At that moment, I realized the truth. The entire community had been aware, in some way, of the abuse, but they had felt powerless to intervene. And right then, I understood the real meaning of the phrase, "it takes a village." This community had failed to protect me when I needed it most, but now, finally, they were finding the courage to speak the truth. I knew then that the complete collapse of my family's structure was inevitable. And in the next 48 hours, the real healing process would finally begin. Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after the Thanksgiving explosion, the first call came at 6:15 a.m. When I saw the caller ID read Destiny, I hesitated before answering. The moment I picked up, her voice came through shaky, broken. "Carson, can I talk to you? I need to apologize." Hearing the words I had waited 25 years to hear, my chest tightened with a strange mixture of relief and skepticism. "I talked with David," Destiny continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "He played me the recordings. Carson, I didn't realize how much I hurt you." That confession gave me the first taste of validation from a family member, but I still held my caution. An hour later, the second call came, this time from Margaret. For the first time in my life, my mother's voice carried none of its usual commanding sharpness. Instead, it was defeated. "Son, I was wrong. I know I treated you unfairly, but I don't know how to fix it." Oh. Her admission tightened my chest again. Not from pain, but from the realization of just how complex this situation had become. But the call that truly shocked me came late that afternoon. From Zane. The brother who had always seen me as beneath him spoke with a voice filled with genuine remorse. "Little brother, I've spent this whole week reflecting on my behavior, and I realize I've been perpetuating the same pattern of abuse I suffered from Dad." End of Rowan. He paused to collect himself, and for the first time in my life, I heard the sound of a grown man crying. "I remember when I was younger, Dad treated me the same way until I proved myself. I thought that was normal. I thought I was helping you by pushing you harder." Hearing his explanation, my heart pounded while my mind went blank, as I suddenly grasped how deeply this cycle of abuse had been passed down through generations. But I knew I needed to separate genuine remorse from strategic damage control. So, with each family member, I asked the same question. What changed? Why now? Destiny's answer was the most convincing. David threatened to leave me if I didn't acknowledge and change my behavior. I realized I was risking losing my own family because of my pride and these toxic patterns I learned. Margaret struggled more with accountability. "I grew up in a household where emotions weren't expressed. I treated you the way I was treated." Zane's response, though, showed a deeper level of insight. "I realized I became exactly like Dad, using success to justify cruelty, and I don't want my kids to learn the same patterns." In that moment, I caught a glimpse of a future where healing might be possible, but only if strict boundaries were set and maintained. Friday, I arranged a family meeting at a neutral location, the conference room of Mr. Peterson's office. The presence of the lawyer ensured the seriousness of the gathering and provided a legal framework for any agreements we made. When everyone assembled, the atmosphere was tense but respectful. For the first time, I sat at the head of the table instead of being pushed to the side. With a firm, clear voice, I laid out the conditions for continuing any relationship with me. "If you want me to remain part of this family, these are the non-negotiable requirements." Note: First, I established communication boundaries. No more interruptions, dismissive remarks, or belittling comments. Family discussions must include equal participation from all members. Second, I demanded financial transparency. I would receive quarterly reports on the farm's finances and have a voice in major decisions involving the property I was set to inherit. Third, I required public acknowledgement. The family had to publicly correct the narrative they had spread in the community about my character and my abilities. Finally, I called for ongoing accountability. Monthly family meetings with a third-party mediator would be mandatory to ensure these boundaries were maintained. When I finished, silence hung in the room for several long moments. Margaret was the first to speak, her voice shaky but sincere. "You have every right to demand these things. I agree to all of it." "Now," Destiny nodded vigorously, I'll make a public statement about your accomplishments and character. I promise. Zayn took longer to respond, but at last he said, "You've earned this respect through what you've done recently. I'll treat you as an equal partner in family decisions." In that moment, I realized I had lost something I could never get back: the illusion of unconditional family love. But I had gained something far more valuable: self-respect and the beginnings of genuine relationships built on mutual respect. But Thomas remained conspicuously absent from the reconciliation process. Once the embezzlement charges were officially filed, he withdrew completely from all family interactions. Uncle Robert called to update me on Thomas's situation. "Carson, your father has moved out of the family home. He's staying in a motel and refuses any contact with the family." Hearing that, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The investigation revealed that Thomas's gambling addiction had consumed him for years. The district attorney decided to pursue criminal charges, and the community completely ostracized him from every social and professional circle he once relied on. Most tragically, Thomas's pride kept him from seeking help or taking responsibility. Instead of acknowledging his wrongdoing, he blamed everyone else, including me, for his downfall. In our final conversation, he called only to hurl accusations. "Carson, you destroyed everything we built. You'll regret this." Hearing those words dripping with venom instead of remorse, I swallowed hard, forced back the swell of emotions, and accepted a painful truth. Some people choose destruction over growth. When I hung up the phone for the last time, I realized that losing a toxic parent might be necessary for my own emotional survival. And in that moment, I knew the phone call that would bring everything full circle was coming soon. And when it did, it would complete the transformation I had begun. 6 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation, I sat in my new office at one of Los Angeles's top advertising agencies. My promotion to creative director had come with a 40% salary increase recognition. I never thought possible back when I was living under the shadow of my family's disapproval. As I looked out the window at the downtown skyline, I reflected on the transformation my life had undergone. For the first time, every decision I made was grounded in my own values and aspirations, not in some desperate attempt to prove my worth to people who never valued me. During one of my weekly sessions, Dr. Chen commented on the dramatic shift in my demeanor. "Carson, you carry yourself completely differently now. You have the confidence I always hoped you'd develop." Hearing that observation, a warmth spread through me as I realized my sense of self-worth no longer depended on anyone else's validation. My relationships outside of family improved dramatically as well. With Jennifer, a coworker I had quietly admired for months, I finally found the courage to ask her out. When she enthusiastically said yes, I realized that authentic confidence was far more attractive than a desperate need for approval. On our third date, Jennifer smiled and said, "Carson, there's something different about you. You have an inner strength you probably don't even realize." Her words made me pause. As my mind tried to catch up with the transformation others could already see, I was still learning to process myself. But the most significant change came in my relationship with work. Instead of accepting mediocre projects and keeping silent in meetings, I began advocating for my creative vision. A proposal I submitted for a major tech company's campaign wasn't just accepted, it went on to win industry awards. In that moment, I realized the truth. My talent had always been there. It had only been buried under years of criticism and self-doubt. The first spring after the confrontation brought remarkable changes in our family dynamics. Monthly mediation sessions with Dr. Patricia Williams, a family therapist, helped us establish new patterns of communication. Destiny made good on her promise of public acknowledgement. At a hospital charity gala, she introduced me to her colleagues with genuine pride. "This is my brother, Carson. He's a creative director at a top agency in LA, and he just won a national advertising award." Hearing those words from her tightened my chest with the emotion I had craved for decades. Zayn's transformation was impressive too. He began including me in legal decisions that affected the family property and regularly sought my input on business matters. When the farm started turning a profit again under the new management structure, he credited the collaborative approach. Margaret struggled the most with changing long-established patterns, but her effort was genuine. She enrolled in therapy to address her own childhood trauma and to learn healthy communication skills. During one especially meaningful conversation, my mother acknowledged through tears, "Son, I realize I projected my own insecurities onto you. I was afraid that if you became too confident, you would leave the family the way I once wanted to leave. Hearing that, my chest tightened not from pain, but from understanding the complexity of generational trauma. The most surprising development was my relationship with David. He became the mentor I never had, sharing insights on navigating the professional world and maintaining healthy relationships. "Carson," he said during one coffee meeting, "I admire the courage you showed. You broke a cycle many families never escape. Holiday gatherings have changed completely. Instead of dreading them, I actually looked forward to them. Conversations became balanced, with genuine interest in each person's life and achievements. On Christmas morning, when I unwrapped thoughtful gifts chosen specifically for my interests rather than generic afterthoughts, my heart pounded and my mind went strangely blank as I realized just how far these relationships had evolved. The most unexpected outcome came from the community's response. The story of me standing up to family abuse began inspiring others in similar situations. I received letters from people sharing their own experiences, thanking me for the courage to speak out. The local domestic violence center invited me to speak about emotional abuse within families. Despite my initial nervousness, telling my story publicly turned into a deeply healing experience. Abuse doesn't always leave physical marks, I told an audience of 200 people. Sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones you can't see. After the presentation, a young woman approached me with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. I've been living with emotional abuse for years and thought I was crazy. Your story helped me realize I deserve better." Hearing the impact my words had on her life sent a powerful sense of purpose surging through me. Professional recognition also exceeded every expectation. An industry publication featured a story about my creative work, which led to job offers from agencies across the country. Suddenly, I wasn't just another name in advertising, I was sought after talent, no longer the person quietly grateful for scraps of opportunity. Financial independence from the farm inheritance gave me a kind of security I had never known. With my 1/3 ownership stake providing steady income, I had the freedom to take creative risks and pursue projects aligned with my own values. But the greatest surprise came on a spring evening when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The caller introduced himself as Thomas's brother, Uncle Michael, calling from Arizona. "Carson," he said gently, "I've been following your story. I just wanted to tell you that you did the right thing. Thomas needs help, but you are not responsible for fixing him." Hearing that validation from an extended family member tightened my throat with gratitude, and in that moment, I knew I would never see things the same way again. The phone call that would bring everything full circle was near, and when it came, it would complete the healing process I had begun. And that's why that 6 a.m. phone call mattered so much. Nearly a year after the Thanksgiving confrontation, Margaret was finally ready to have a real conversation about healing. When my mother's trembling voice came through the line, "Carson, I've enrolled in a family therapy program. I want to learn how to become a better mother to you, even if it's late." My chest tightened with a mixture of hope and caution. Hearing that admission from the woman who had spent decades dismissing my feelings, I felt a fundamental shift in the family's power structure. Thomas still refused help and remained in his self-imposed isolation, but the rest of the family chose growth over pride. Zane attended therapy regularly. Destiny had become an outspoken advocate against family abuse, and Margaret was slowly, deliberately, learning how to express love without control. But the most important lesson I learned wasn't about changing others, it was about changing myself. For 25 years, I waited for validation from my family instead of creating my own worth. In a recent session, Dr. Chen told me, "Carson, you've discovered that true power comes from self-respect, not external approval." Hearing that truth, my heart pounded and my mind went strangely blank as I realized this journey had transformed me from a victim into an empowered individual. If you're living in a toxic family situation, remember this. You don't owe loyalty to people who abuse you, even if they share your DNA. You have the right to demand respect, to set boundaries, and to walk away if necessary. Sometimes losing your seat at the table is exactly what you need in order to build your own. And when you build it, you get to choose who sits with you. In that moment, I knew that true family isn't defined by blood, but by mutual respect, love, and support. And with that realization, I finally found peace.